Welcome everyone to our planning board for Monday, November 1st. Going to call the meeting to order. Declarations of conflict of interest. Any? I see none. Thank you. Finally, the approval of the agenda. Moved by Kenny, seconded by Basil Hamlin. All those in favor? Unanimous decision. Thank you. Adoption of the minutes of the planning board meeting on Tuesday, October 4th. I need a mover and a second for the minutes. If you want to take a minute first before that, just to review. Let's do so.
I'm ready to move that.
Okay, moved by Councilor McKay. Second by Chris Fournier. Thank you very much. All those in favor? Good, thank you very much. Business arising from those minutes. Okay, great, thank you. Reports, we'll go to 6A. I believe, Jennifer, you're up with 240 Fitzroy Street.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, I'm Jen McLaren presenting 6A. 6A1. This application is for a major variance for an extension of a legal non-conforming use at 240 Fitzroy Street. The site is designated downtown neighborhood, and the proposed extension of the legal non-conforming commercial use would allow for office. The site is situated mid-block on the south side of Fitzroy between Weymouth and Cumberland Street. The building itself is one story and has housed a number of legal and non-conforming uses for the past number of decades. Most recently it was Dasco equipment, as shown here in the street view image of the property. This image is showing southwest on Fitzroy, so it includes the adjacent residential and ABL Dairy, which is across the street. And this is northwest on Fitzroy, which includes more residential and Hasham's Variety Store. The proposed commercial office space would operate typical office hours Monday to Friday. It would consist of approximately 5 staff, and there is on-site parking. The office is expected to generate little activity as the staff travel to site. So in conclusion, based on the reasons outlined in your report, staff is recommending approval of this request for a major variance for legal non-conforming use extension for the purpose of office at 240 Fitzroy. The applicant is here if we have any questions, and that concludes my presentation.
Any questions for Jen? And the second question is to the applicants here. Would we like to hear from them? I think it's probably not a bad idea. Anyone got any questions or concerns? No? Do we want to hear from the applicant, or are we comfortable? You want to hear from? Okay. Jen? Yeah, please introduce.
It's always been a commercial use.
Rich time, right?
That's where
So
a lot of my business started.
Yeah.
Is he making it bigger? For the
I
major
think it's
variance?
just to extend the non-conforming use
It just, yeah.
commercial.
Welcome to the planning board.
Thank you very much for allowing me to attend. My name is Dave Power. I'm the owner of National Port Security Services. We purchased the building 240 Fitzroy a few months back, and we plan just as we're a growing company. We currently rent space from Port Charlottetown, but we need more space than we currently have available at Port Charlottetown, and 240 Fitzroy sort of fits the bill for a growing office and administrative needs. And again, our guard service, they don't typically come to the office except for a payroll issue or something like that. They go to the given site that they're at. So we're just, the staff would come to their office and do their administrative duties and go home at the end of the day. There's not a lot of in-out activity like a store or something like that would be.
Any questions for Mr. Power? I mean, the parking and everything, Mr. Power, would be, what's the areas of it is sufficient for what you're doing?
Yeah, there's 5 on-site parking
Yeah.
spots, and there is some street parking, but yeah, we would probably need that.
Okay.
Across the street is Holland College parking as well.
Right.
And we do security for Holland College, so I'm sure if we needed an extra spot, we could pry them a little bit.
Any questions for Mr. Power, folks?
I have a question, your chair, but I don't know if it's for Mr. Powers. In this major variance request, do letters have to be sent out, 100 meters of the neighbors? Just don't see that in the report.
Yeah.
I'll let Jen answer that, yeah.
Yeah, through the chair, circulation was complete, yeah.
Yeah.
And no responses were received.
None at all. Okay, and did you hear any feedback from any of the neighbors?
I had not. I spoke to one owner, I'm not sure the gentleman's name, directly to the east of me. He has a duplex there. He had no concerns. The only thing he was concerned with was get the driveway plug. We share access to the
Okay.
backyard.
Right.
That was only his concern.
Great. No, thank you, that's the only question I had.
Easy peasy.
You know,
I hope it's
For you.
For you, that's mine.
Thank you very much, Mr. Power, for coming in, and they'll be in touch.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem.
So, in consideration of the foregoing planning recommendation of approval of the major variance request, I'll need a motion.
I'll move to accept that.
Moved by Councilor McCabe, seconded by President Member Chris Fournier, that we take staff's recommendation. All those in favor? Unanimous decision. Thank you very much, everyone. Yeah, let's hope they're all that easy. Thanks, Jennifer. Okay. Who's doing Robert tonight?
I am.
You are?
Yep.
Okay, Alex will be doing the second variance, which is 35 Prince Street, pin number 337089. Just a bit of background, so this has been back here a couple of times, and we're here to give it one last chat and then go from there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, as you pointed out, this was at the board before. Just to refresh your memory, this is a property that's a legal non-conforming use. It's an old Corning line laundry. It was converted to a small restaurant. At the time, there's been a couple of requests in the past to allow it to have sell liquor at the restaurant. Council, on a couple of occasions, thought that wasn't prudent in light of the fact that it was a non-conforming use, and they were at the time a little bit reluctant to extend that to allowing for alcohol to be used. You can see on page 49, at least in my package, the terms and conditions that were there. The subject property contains a legal non-conforming use. The attached resolution is intended to restrict the definition by excluding the sale of liquor, so that happened in 2017. Again, another application was made in 2019, and the council determined the same thing, that they would prefer that liquor not be a part of the eating and drinking establishment that's currently there. The eating part of it is the restaurant. The drinking, of course, is the alcohol component. So this went to planning board with a negative recommendation back to council. Council had been hearing some things in the neighborhood, so they wanted to determine if there was any willingness by the residents down there to entertain that use. There is a number of a petition or a number of names on the report this evening that that came in through the owner, indicating a desire to utilize that use there. There is an existing development agreement on the property. The development agreement allowed the time to go to 12 o'clock in the evening. So the hours of operation Monday to Sunday between 10 a.m. and 12 a.m. No expansion of the eating and drinking establishment. So staff are basically indicating, in light of the past history on this, that the planning recommendation will be the same. Notwithstanding, if the board or if council wishes to change that, you could amend the development agreement. What I would tell you to contemplate if you were to do that is you may want to pull the hours down from 12. I think the owner said something like 8:30. I would indicate that for some wiggle room, if you so desired, that maybe 9 o'clock would be an appropriate time. The other thing too is that you would likely want to make it clear that if you're going to go in that direction, that it's only inside the building, no liquor to be served outside the building, and patio sort of situation. So that's the report, and just looking for a recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good. Thank you very much, Alex. Any questions for Alex? Mr. Kane?
I guess my question, Alex, is why is this even here tonight? It went to city council last month, right? And they voted to defer it with the intent of maybe having a look at the development agreement to cover some of the things that you just mentioned.
Right, yeah.
So that hasn't happened?
No, it did happen. And again, it's maybe just an issue of clarity. So, you know, things flow from here, they flow to council. Council, it indicated they deferred it, and just maybe for future reference, but when council defers something, it's at the council level. Council can deal with it themselves, and maybe there was some, miscommunication. I think the intent was that it come back here. So it didn't come back here, went back to council, because they were the people that asked for the deferral. They felt it would be better that you folks review that before it gets back for a final decision from council.
So you okay with that?
So what are we reviewing right now?
Well, you're reviewing your original decision. Your original decision was to turn it down. It's back. If there's some new information there, if you feel that you're comfortable with the previous recommendation, that's fine. But if you wanted to change your recommendation, this would be the time to do it.
So just 1 second, Councilor Yankoff. So council votes when there's a recommendation from planning board, right? So we didn't do that. We missed that, right? So the same information was in the package. It was going to go back to council, and if council doesn't see anything new, they say, well, let's just vote on what the staff says. No, this is pretty. But I felt that it should come back here because there's quite a bit of interest, as we see in the letters from the community, thinking that it's a good idea. And I thought, well, unless council really hears that, then it's not fair to both council and to the owners of the store to hear what good things are coming out of it, and they might change the vote, right? I mean, staff is still recommending because it's a non-conforming use, but we often go the other way. COVID has a lot to do with that. Various reasons, so that's why it's back here for us to have a discussion and make a recommendation to help staff put the report together for council.
Okay, so has there been a new development agreement?
No, it's, so just to recap, so you folks made a recommendation to not support it. It went to council, council deferred it. They just said deferred, so they deferred it. Because it was in the hands of council, it went back to council, because you had already made a determination. So then again, it went back to council, and council said, well, look, we would prefer, because there is some change, we'd like to, again, resubmit it back to the planning board, because they may think differently about it as well. So that's why it's back. So there's no decision been made on it.
Okay.
So here this evening, if planning board decides they want to make a change or make a recommendation, then this will be the place. If someone decides they want to make a motion, there'll be a seconder and we'll vote on it. But I think there's some other questions yet before we get there. So Councillor Yankoff.
Just to build a little bit on what Mr. Kenny said, there obviously was some miscommunication, because when this was deferred back to planning, it goes back to planning staff because council gave direction that they wanted to see if there was some sort of a compromise, that we could give this business some sort of a break, and if there could be some more work done on whether or not that could be done. So my assumption was that the planning board wasn't just going to give us the same report they already gave us, the planning staff, and not recommend it without putting some examples and thoughts into what the planning board could look at as, how could this work? What could we do to ensure that the residents are getting their needs met, but at the same time, this small business owner could have a small liquor license? So I assumed we were going to be seeing some changes to the development agreement for us as planning board to look at, to see whether or not we agreed with it or we wanted things added or taken away before we made a recommendation, whether it went back to council. So I don't know. We just approved a major variance in the same type of area for non-conforming, and this time we're saying no. And so maybe I'm confused, Mr. Forbes. I just thought you were going to give us a new development agreement to look at, make changes on, or if not, I guess, are you saying that it's up to us then to create a new development agreement?
I think the only issue is that if you want to support it, the only, which I alluded to, is that if you want to support it, you want to contemplate the hours of operation based upon what the applicant has said, and that there's no outside, you can't sell alcohol outside on, in a patio situation. That's the only amendments that would be to the development agreement, to allow for the liquor license, the hours of operation. You don't have to, the development agreements are always done by staff. We don't usually circulate them through initially, but this is an existing agreement. So those are the three areas that I would focus on. Hours of operation,
Yeah.
allow them to have the liquor license, and then the third one be not to allow the sale of alcohol outside of the building.
And I might say, just to build on that, a fourth one would be that there are some neighbors with concerns, so can we not put this in as a 1-year time limit and reevaluate it to ensure that it didn't disrupt the harmonious neighborhood that some of the neighbors thought it might be?
You're kind of getting into a temporary use, and you're now changing a little bit what the original notice went out on. The original notice was to change this permanently, so that you'd have to sort of stop this application and restart it if you just wanted a 1-year temporary use. Temporary use is a different process than amending a development agreement.
So saying that, so if we, let's say we do something here this evening and it gets out of hand, the residents are unhappy, can they come in again with a request to?
Not if if you approve this, you're approving it permanently, and then you would, then if council decided to approve it, we would amend the development agreement and it would be permanently approved. So
But only as long as they're the owners.
Well, it's usually, again, not necessarily. All development agreements run with the land, not with the owner.
But can we do that?
You're not supposed to be rezoning by people, supposed to be rezoning by the use.
Yeah.
But can we do that? Can we put that
I
in the
guess,
development agreement?
I guess the question would be, Alex, like, residents are concerned, we wouldn't want to see that property go to another owner and then they open it up to 12 o'clock.
Well, but again, that's.
But they could come back in and ask.
No, but that's your opportunity this evening. You can set whatever you want in the development agreement.
Right.
You can say 9 o'clock, just inside the restaurant, no liquor outside, and, and again, any other terms and conditions that you thought would be helpful. But it's just a matter of, you've got an existing development agreement, which
Right. Says so.
you have to get amended in some capacity.
Mr. Kane.
And those things you just mentioned, I think, are all in place now. They close at 8 o'clock,
Right.
there's no outside decks.
Right.
They're just looking to serve a glass of wine or a glass of beer. No hard
During the
or
meal.
anything like that.
But
My question about the concerns from the area, when the letters went out to the people within 100 meters, what were the instructions for people?
it's just always that they're asking to, for the opportunity to sell alcohol at the premise, which the residents had seen at least twice before in recent history.
But for the residents of that area, what do you tell them if they have concerns?
We tell them to basically call us if you want to get more information, but it's just,
And how many calls have you had? Like, I always see one letter of objection, and that's from a lady who lives over by me near West Kent School.
Yeah, it's Robert's application. I'm not aware, but I can't, somebody could have called Robert, but I'm not aware. Nobody called me on it.
So what I'm saying is, there's only one letter of objection here.
To my knowledge, but somebody could have called Robert, but to my knowledge, that's all that was formally sent in. You're correct.
I'll let Councilor McKay go next one.
Yeah.
Oh, if she has questions, I was going to put a motion, I'll just read through it. Or Councilor Yankovic.
I guess we should know how many people called and didn't call. I know it's Robert's application, but shouldn't we know how many?
Well, in the package, it's just one. right?
Yeah, but the calls, the process is designed, you're supposed to write the letter, right?
Okay.
Sometimes people just randomly call up, and then we say, you should write a letter. They go, I don't want to put my name down. So that's not really,
Doesn't matter.
we get informal knowledge and we get formal knowledge, so it's the letters that are for your decision making. Yep.
Okay, that makes sense. So the calls are just, that they don't really.
Sometimes, I can't speak for Robert. Sometimes people call us, they're asking they want clarity, right? Sometimes they go.
But if it was official, it would be in the
Right. The letter that's sent to them is to, you have to put your concerns in writing and submit them by the time frame.
Okay.
Right, and like you say, I got one letter of objections from a lady that lives in Sydney now.
Right, yeah.
This was,
I just had a question around process. Is this a reconsideration that we're doing?
No, it's
Variance.
just, council has asked it to come back here, and for you to review it. It's up to you folks how you want to deal with it, and they want to send it back to council. Council didn't make a decision, a reconsideration, a decision has to be made. Council never made a decision, so before you even get into a reconsideration, you can only reconsider a council decision. Council didn't make a decision.
we kind of, part of the miscommunication was the fact that it didn't come here before going back to council after the deferral. So it stayed at the deferral. Council was just going to look at it again and say, okay, there's nothing happening, okay, we'll just vote on them. Or does planning board have we now have the opportunity, if you decide you want to make a motion or a change, this is the time to do it. So,
And I
yes.
just had one more question, and
Yeah.
thank you very much, Alex, for pinch hitting for Robert tonight. Does the petition count?
Well, I was going to mention that a minute ago, so that's part of the update, I guess, to the package, is the fact that there is a fair amount of
Well,
names added to the
Yes
package.
and no. When I go through it, I mean, it's my ward, there's probably 8 in the area, but that's 8 people in support of it. The rest of them are in support, and that's lovely for them, but
Customers.
they wouldn't have been hit in the 100-meter
No.
call out. And are we allowed, do we look at this as part of it, or is that
It's-
just an information?
Well, it's, you're dealing with sort of the first application and, what you received on it. So we have deferred it. It is additional information. When the letters go out to the public, the letters are written to you and council. They're not written to staff. The only thing that staff want to see in the letter, or I want to see, is there anything that wasn't in the report that's relevant, right? Because you're asking them their opinion, where staff just give an opinion based upon the bylaw, whatever's in place. So, yeah, it is relevant. That there is certainly some support in or at least their clients are supportive of it. And then I think for this group is that if you were going to change your position, you would want to be comfortable that those changes are fortified with a new development agreement that you think will protect the residents' concerns, like the hours of operation, like 12 to a certain degree. Some people may feel that that's an improvement if you go from closing at midnight. Again, keeping in mind they could sell it, so if you pull it down, the new person is going to have to abide by that as well. So that's why I recommend it maybe 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock.
So,
Any other discussion? I think you have a motion to put in the floor?
I have a motion.
Okay,
on the
cool.
floor.
Any other discussion, guys? Or we can actually give the discussion after the motion too, actually. So,
Absolutely. My motion would be to not support the rejection of the application, but to support the application for the liquor license with the
Right.
development agreement that
right, with the
indicating
amendments.
9 o'clock,
Right.
no outdoor, and at that way at
And what was
least
the third one?
until 9 o'clock, inside only.
But there was 3 things.
The
Things
time.
that Mr. Forbes had recommended for the development.
I think there was, it's the
No
hours.
patio.
Oh, and just that they'd be allowed to sell liquor. Like you have to take that out of the other agreement.
And we can't stipulate just beer and wine?
No, that's the liquor licensing, but, again, it's a pretty small little place. I think it's, anyway, I mean, it shouldn't be
They'd be quite happy with beer and wine if you.
right. And there may be, if there is a license like that, we can, I can talk to the liquor licensing board, but they have very standardized liquor licenses, right? They just have like 5 licenses, so I don't think they break them up that way, but.
yeah.
If they do, could we just, that way, if they ever sell, we're protecting the neighborhood as well by keeping it as low impact as possible?
You can.
We can suggest it.
Right, and I will have that answer before the council meeting.
Okay.
So beer and wine is a.
So-
So you made the motion.
So we have a motion here on the floor,
I'll second it.
seconded by Bob Kenny, that we go against staff's recommendation and approve a liquor license with special operation hours.
Approve an amendment to the development agreement
To the
to
development
allow
agreement,
for
right.
a liquor, an eating and drinking establishment,
Right.
because that's the drinking is the drinking part.
Right.
And the hours, 9 o'clock, no outside, it has to be contained inside, and I will look into if we can limit the There may be 3 things in that, but I'll see what the low impact liquor license, the lowest one is. And I'll get back to council and they will have that for Monday night.
Clear as mud.
Yep.
Thank you, Al.
All those in favor of the motion, please put up your hand.
Got a second.
Yeah, you're the second. Looks like it's unanimous decision. Thank you very much. Great discussion, everybody.
Yes, thank you, Al.
Good. Okay, so we're now on to rezoning. 6B, Emily is going to talk about 3 First Street, pin number 276501.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So good evening, everyone. Today, there's a request before you to proceed to public consultation, and that's regarding a rezoning application to rezone 3 First Street from low-density residential R2 to narrow single-detached residential R1N. So just quickly, the property you're looking at, 3 First Street, you'll be familiar with the area just to the southwest there being the old jail. So it's kind of near that juncture of Mount Edward Road, St. Peter's Road, and Belmont Street. So it's the low density residential area kind of tucked in there. First Street is a dead end street, so it's just north of that dead end terminus where this property is located. It's zoned today, as I mentioned, low density residential R2. It's currently being used for a single detached dwelling. It has a small detached garage on the property and passive landscaping. It's about 0.35 acres in size, a frontage of about 88 feet along First Street, and a depth of about 170 feet. So quickly, the immediate surrounding area to the north, east, and south, they're also zoned R2 today, like the subject property. To the west, fronting St. Peter's Road, they're zoned business, office, commercial, so C1. And then when we look at the province's tax assessment records, they're mostly just single and 2-unit dwellings around this property. So here's a glimpse of what the property looks like today. So you see the existing single detached dwelling on the north portion, and then it's mostly passive landscaping on the south portion. So the reason why they're putting forward this rezoning request is because they're looking to subdivide this lot into 2 parcels. So you can see here, lot 21.2 is what they're proposing with the existing dwelling on it, and then to the south, a new lot, 21.1, where they're looking to put a new single detached dwelling in the future. And the purpose of the rezoning is that today the R2 zoning that applies to it, the existing dwelling and then the future single detached dwelling, it wouldn't meet the frontage requirements for single detached dwellings under the R2 zoning. If they rezoned it to R1 though, it would meet the frontage requirements because R1N is for narrow lots, and this is what the new lots would be. Narrow, and it would meet the area frontage setback requirements. You can see, if I go back here, that they showed like a potential footprint for the new dwelling, and it would satisfy all those requirements in the R1N zone. So just for your folks' information, if this gets approved by council to go to public consultation, there's some duties we have to fulfill as staff. We do a notice out to owners of properties within 100 meters, at least 7 days before the public meeting. We let them know about the request, the date of the meeting, and the deadline for written, again, the formal written objections or letters of support. We also have to do at least 2 notices in the local newspaper, at least 7 days before the public meeting date. And we have to post a notice on the property where it's visible, at least 7 days before the public meeting date as well. So just some quick facts about what happens from here if it's approved. So we're recommending approval of the request to go to public consultation. We're satisfied there's enough information for this to be assessed further. So if you guys have any questions, let me know.
Okay, thank you very much. As chair, am I allowed to take that hat off and put my councillor hat back on?
As long as you're not voting on anything.
Just, it's in my ward, so.
Yeah.
Just, so the back part of that lot, can that be something done with it later? Like, could he come back later to subdivide that lot again?
Oh, the rear parcel?
Yeah,
Or,
we-
you
see
mean
how
like
much
right
room?
back here?
Yeah,
I believe.
there wouldn't be
that-
enough room for a driveway or anything.
No, it'd be an odd configuration, like you'd be looking at like a flag-shaped lot, which we generally kind of would discourage.
It just seems to be like a lot of space there in the back, I'm just curious.
It's a very deep lot for
Yeah.
sure, but, you know, we'd obviously have to look at
Yeah.
like a proposal, like a footprint and everything, but I think flag-shaped lots, we're trying to steer clear of those if we can.
And one more question for you, so it's from the lot next to, coming down the street, what is it, 6 feet from the
This
from
one
the
here?
property line? Yes.
They are not showing the footprint there, but we could certainly have a look at it in the event that it is 6 feet from the property limit. Let's see if it shows actually on that.
Okay, yeah, I didn't really see it in the package, I was just curious.
Which is a good question, and I can look at that further as we kind of get into the assessment of it. It does look like it has like a good side yard setback, but I can get the exact
Yeah.
details on that. In the event that it is less than 6 feet, different building code restrictions would apply, like the type of material that could be used on that facade, the
Yeah.
number of unprotected openings that could be on that facade. So that's kind of dealt with in the building permit stage. Yeah, the
That's good.
building
Okay.
official will look at those
Uh-huh.
things.
And I believe the developer is here.
They are here, yes, if there's
Okay,
any questions.
yes, Councilor Yanko.
I just have one question. Not really a question, more so just an observation. Those are really deep lots in
They
that.
are, yes.
So,
Yeah.
and so by the purpose of these, that zoning, that skinny zoning, you've got nice deep backyards to kind of make up for the narrow type of a lot.
Yeah.
Is that the idea?
Yeah, sorry, I'm flipping too quickly here.
Okay.
Yeah, so there would be plenty of backyard kind of amenity area for sure,
Yeah.
even though it would be tighter on the front. Yeah, and you can, I mean, again, this is a preliminary review of this. We haven't gotten into the nitty gritty yet, but there are lots along St. Peter's Road that are kind of similar in terms of that narrow frontage as well,
Yeah.
just like to the back of these guys.
Very good, thank you.
You're in God's country, we're all around you.
Yeah.
The
Mine's-
property that's there now is gorgeous.
Yeah.
One's at Basil Hamley first.
So the lot, potential of the lot is 43.9, and then taking
Or something.
6 feet off of either side of the new proposed house would be the house that's somewhere around 27?
You mean the width of
Yeah.
the dwelling? Yeah, again, I can look more closely at that, but it certainly exceeds the 18 meter requirement, I think, yeah. So we will look at those things as it kind of moves through the next stages, like that it meets, satisfies the minimum width requirement, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Is the developer here?
I believe so. I feel as though I saw
Yeah, I thought he
someone
was here.
behind me here,
Yeah,
just
so-
can you bear with me?
So does, we want to bring him
I
in?
think they're the owners.
They're the owner, yeah. Do we want to have him in since he's here? Or do we just good to go?
I'm prepared to put a motion on the floor to move on, to recommend to council that we go on to public consultation.
I'll second that.
Okay, no need. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to go to public consultation, moved by Councillor Yankoff, seconded by Councillor McCabe. All those in favor? So unanimous decision. Thank you very much, Ellen.
Thank you.
Tell
Thank
Mr.
you,
Aiken he's good to go. So the next phase. Okay, I know we haven't heard of this one before. 38 Palmer's Lane.
Main show now for the
Actually,
next 4 applications.
Oh, sorry.
I'm going to step out on this one.
Yep, just, oh, yes, and Alex is in conflict. Yep, this one, family, yeah. Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you.
Okay, so this application was before the board last month. And the board recommended for it to proceed to public consultation. It's a request to rezone the property located at 38 Palmer's Lane from R2 low-density residential to R3 medium-density residential, R3T medium-density residential townhouse, and a portion of PID number 275164 from R4 apartment residential zone to R3T medium-density residential town zone. And that portion, as I mentioned before, is this small portion right here. It's also a request to amend Appendix A of the official plan map from low-density residential to medium-density residential for PID number 275156. So the property, it's bounded to the north by Palmer's Lane with R2 zone properties on the opposite side of the street, and to the east by 2 properties that are zoned R4 apartment residential here. And to the south with single detached residential R1S zone right here. And to the west with low density R2 right here. So public notification requirements. So in accordance with the notification requirements in the bylaw on October 13th, we sent letters out to 43 residents. 3 letters were received in response to the notification letter. 1 letter was in support, and 2 letters were in opposition to the proposed rezoning request and the official plan amendment. The letters were included in your package. At the public meeting, Greg Munn, I know some of you were there, but I'm not sure if all of you were there. Greg Munn is the architect for the project with Sable Arc Studios, and he spoke about the proposed development. He gave details about the building design, materials to be used, site design and landscaping. He also discussed the built form along Palmer's Lane and how he designed the buildings to fit into that existing streetscape. So, and also how the buildings are proposed to provide a transition between the higher density development and commercial development that's to the east, and then the lower density development that's to the west. So following his presentation, residents were invited to speak, and overall the comments from the public were positive. There were residents at the public meeting that were opposed to previous applications and that spoke in favor of the current townhouse proposal. They stated that they felt the developer and the architect listened to the residents' comments and concerns from previous applications, and that the townhouse buildings were well designed and that they did fit well into the neighborhood. So comments in support from some of the residents were previous development proposals were not compatible with the neighborhood. This time the developer has listened to the neighborhood and has worked with an architect to design a development proposal that's more appropriate for our neighborhood. The development will provide housing within the neighborhood. One resident stated she may consider moving into one of the new units and that she was in opposition to previous applications. The density and scale of the development is more appropriate for the neighborhood, and townhouse design is attractive and fits well in along the streetscape. So some of the comments in opposition that we received at the public meeting and by letter, there was concerns raised about surface water runoff and garbage disposal from the development from a neighbor that lives to the south of the property. The scale and density of the project is too large for the neighborhood. Concerns about traffic issues and increasing traffic from high density developments on Manor Road and St. Peter's Road. This is piecemeal development and encroachment of high density development into a low density neighborhood. Staff would note that issues such as stormwater management are addressed prior to a building permit being issued, and that engineered site drainage plans are required, and they have to be prepared by professionals to ensure that water runoff doesn't affect adjoining property owners, and those are required prior to issuing any building permits. So we would need to know that that's been taken into account. Anything to do with solid waste management, that's also included in the building permit application, so they have to show on site where they're going to locate their receptacles for garbage and how they're going to manage that. So if rezoning were to occur, in order to mitigate any potential or perceived land use conflicts, a landscape buffer, and that could be a tree, or that could be trees or a fence, it would be required to be planted and retained by the developer along the property boundaries of proposed development in any low density neighborhood, any low density development. So given the location of this proposed infill development adjacent to apartment residential and low density residential, staff feel the proposal provides a transition in the zoning between the commercial commercial and higher density development to the east along St. Peter's Road and here, and to the low density development to the west on Palmer's Lane. So all the way up and along here towards Ardgow and Mount Edward Road. And there are various sections in the official plan that supports appropriate infill development, and I've included those in the report. I'm sure you took a look at those. And staff feel that with the current shortage of housing, that this development does fit in well with the neighborhood, and it will provide additional housing choices. Although some of the residents have concerns with the proposal to locate these townhouse dwellings on the property, staff feel the proposal fits in well along the streetscape in terms of bulk, scale, and mass. It is located in a neighborhood that has access to services such as transit, shopping, schools, and churches. And it is more in line, this proposal, it's more in line with good planning principles and policies in the official plan that support appropriate infill development within an existing neighborhood. And therefore, based on these principles, staff are recommending for approval of the rezoning and lot consolidation subject to the signing of a development agreement. Sir, any questions?
Thank you, Laurel, very much. Any questions concerning 38 Councilor Yankoff?
Just an observation, it was one of those great examples, and I think Councilman McKay brought this up at the public meeting, where a developer listened to the residents and went back to the drawing board and came up with something more suitable. So I would put a resolution on the floor that accept this and staff's recommendation and send it out to council.
We have a mover on the floor. We need a seconder. Seconded by Councilor McCabe. All those in favor, please put your hand up. 1, 2, 3. Unanimous decision again. Thank you very much. I'd just like to say, it's good to see, the planning principles get adhered to, and there's a reason why staff sometimes are sticklers, but they pay attention to the rules, and it's good to see the developer get out and talk to the community and see them embrace it. I mean, there was some rejection, but at the end of the day, I think there was quite a few more in favor, right? It's like Rocky End.
Two of the people that spoke were the
Yeah.
residents immediately to the west
Right.
of the development, and they're the ones that have the biggest impact.
Right.
And they've gone from against it
To come forward and moving into it.
And then they want the family in the letter in here, I think that their concerns are going to be addressed through the building permit.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, Laurel, on that one.
And I did speak to her personally before the public meeting, and she was quite comfortable with it, and she was also at the public meeting. And I did indicate that we would be requiring a development agreement. The biggest concern seemed to be just a landscape buffer. She has a heavily treed property line, but the developer also needs to provide some form of buffer adjacent to her as well.
Yeah, which is good, yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, moving on, we have, going to section C, corner of Towers Road, Manor Road. I'll give the PIN numbers anyway, just for reference sake for those that are watching. 3905559, 3905534, and 3905542, and Laurel's up again. Thank you.
Okay, so this was also before the board last month and also in August, and it was for input on final architectural design drawings for townhouse dwellings located in the CDA zone on the corner of Mount Edward Road and Towers Road. The board recommended to accept the changes as presented by the developer last month. However, at the October 12th council meeting, council deemed the changes to the architectural drawings for the townhouse as substantive and referred them back to a public meeting to advise the public of the revised plans. So I'm not going to go into all the details of this application because I think everybody's fully aware of what's happened and transpired and the details. So basically, notification, we sent out the notification letters on October 13th to 34 property owners within 100 meters. And 13 letters were received in response to the notification letter. 12 letters were in support, and 1 letter discussed an IRAC appeal that was currently in process. The letters are included in the report. The public meeting was held on October 27th, at, wrong date, October 13th, sorry. At the public meeting, the developer, Tim Banks, spoke about the proposed development and gave background on why they decided to revise the design of the townhouses and the reason for choices in the materials to be used. These were the original proposals, and this is what's currently in play. So when Mr. Banks finished his presentation, council invited residents to speak and ask questions, and overall the comments from the public were positive toward the design changes. 2 residents did express concern that the revised design of the townhouses was proceeding while the application was currently under appeal. One gentleman said that he was not in favor of the change in design to the townhouses. He didn't express why. He just said that he was. However, both people, it seemed that their concerns were related to the process rather than the application that was in play for design of the townhouses. So some of the comments that were in support consisted of the proposed facade improvements are a positive change. The brick is an upgrade in use of materials. The new look fits in better with Sherwood. The brick will improve the quality of the units. So basically, although building form, use, and density are the same as the approved development concept plan, building design and materials for the townhouses, they did differ. This design has brick and vinyl siding, stone lintels over the windows. The front facades are basically, the articulation is single units with garage doors, whereas the original, as you can see, was more modern in design, more of a metal type of material, no eave overhangs, and it was a combination of 2 garage doors, and then it would, the rhythm along the street would be a single garage door, 2 garage doors. So although there was a change in these materials from what was presented in the August 2020 public meeting, the differences basically come down to architectural style. And given that the response from the public to the notification letter and during the public meeting was generally in favor of the proposed design changes, staff are prepared to support the application. So is there any questions?
Okay, thank you very much. Laurel, any questions for Laurel? I see none. Do we have a motion? Moved by Councillor Bob Durand that we accept staff's recommendation to go to council for the approval of the architectural design. Seconded by Chris Fournier. All those in favor, please put up your hand. Good, thank you.
It's Bob Kenny, no Bob Durand.
Did I say Bob? Did I really? Did I really? Sorry to Councillor Durand. And to you.
And Laurel.
That's too funny. Okay, thanks everybody. We'll move on to 25 McLeod Crescent, pin number 11064000 and 1123686. Laurel, you're up again.
Okay, so this request, you saw it last month as well. It was a request for site-specific amendment, and the board recommended to proceed to public consultation. This is in accordance with section 37.1 of the bylaw, and basically it's to allow a medical health and dental office, as is defined in the bylaw, as a permitted use in on the property of 25 McLeod Crescent. If approved, a dental or a medical clinic containing an ophthalmologist office is proposed to be located there. The request also involves the lot consolidation of these 2 properties into one large lot. So they're zoned M2 heavy industrial, and as you're aware, although McLeod Crescent falls under this heavy industrial zone, when the subdivision was developed, a number of businesses that were more business office, business park, commercial in nature, along with health offices, seemed to develop on that street. So due to the nature of the existing development in the area, the property owner requested this site-specific exemption. So the request went to a public meeting on October 13th, same night as the other ones, and we sent 11 notification letters to property owners within 100 meters. We didn't receive any letters in response to our notification letter, and at the public meeting, JV Javier of Coles Associates presented the application and just gave some details of the building design, which I think is quite attractive. He just talked about some of the materials to be used, the landscaping on site, how they plan to integrate this into McLeod Crescent. Following his presentation, council asked if there were any comments from the public, and there were none raised, no comments, either positive or negative. So there was a comment from council that they felt that the building design was attractive as well, and that they felt it would fit in well along McLeod Crescent. So as per section 311(1)A of the bylaw, council may approve a site-specific exemption to the permitted uses and regulations in any zone where a site-specific exemption is not contrary to the official plan. If an application is contrary to the official plan, an application to amend the official plan would be required. And staff did not consider this application as being contrary to the official plan. The section 311D also requires that the proposal does not undermine the overall integrity of any given zone. It's in the public interest and is consistent with overall good planning principles. And staff also feels that the existing land uses on McLeod Crescent in the immediate area, this doesn't undermine the zone in that area or any of those existing land uses. So this area, Mount Everett Road, it began to develop pre-amalgamation in the 80s into an industrial area, and originally some of the uses located in that area were more heavy industrial in nature. And after the city amalgamated, over time, the uses such as car dealerships, retail stores, building supply stores, health offices seem to locate within this given area. So as a result of the uses that are located on McLeod Crescent, staff do not deem this request as being out of context. There's a professional building containing a dental office located immediately across the street from the subject property. Along with the application for a site-specific exemption, this lot consolidation is required for those two properties. And overall, we feel that the site-specific exemption, it's not contentious, it's not incompatible for the area, and we're prepared to support the application for the site-specific exemption and the lot consolidation.
Thank you very much, Laura. Any questions for Laura?
I'm just going to move to accept that.
I just have just one, oh, you have one? No, well, I have just a question on, so this developer would be in the same boat, like he understands that that's the picture presented. And if he was to change.
Yes, so this is a little bit different, this zone. This is an industrial zone. CDA zone is different because they're bound by a development agreement and concept plans. This, in general, how can I put this? Generally, their design has to be compatible with this. They could change some materials. It's not as strict as the CDA zone, but generally you would look for a building that was, of same quality and design and form.
Yeah. Just a question.
Yeah.
Just thought
It
I'd
gets
hear
confusing because when
Yeah.
you're dealing with the CDA zone, it's such a strict zone and there's so many, it's strict but it's flexible.
Right.
So it's flexible in that they can, up front, they can present whatever they want and there's no as of right requirements. But once they present it and it goes to the public, they're bound to that by a development agreement.
Right, okay.
This is a rezoning, it's a site-specific exemption to allow the use. It's not so much, we're not dealing with the building, but what they present, we would generally like to see what they're presenting to us and the public.
Clear as mud. Good. Thank you very much. Any other questions, concerns, or motions?
Question called.
Put the
Questions?
motion on that we accept staff's recommendation.
Moved by Councilor Day, seconded by Councilor Yankoff, that we accept staff's recommendation. All those in favor? We're in agreement tonight, yeah? Great. Thank you very much. 251 Sherwood Road, land north of 251 Sherwood Road, pin number 145128. Laurel.
This is kind of a simple one, but it's basically, it's an application in accordance with section 46.3.4A of the zoning and development bylaw, and it's to consolidate PID number 145128 with PID number 145128, the same PID. But it's separate properties, so this is one piece, and then this is a separate property. Same owner, same PID. The bylaw permits staff to approve lot consolidations in the R1 and R2 zones. However, the bylaw requires that council approve lot consolidations in any zone other than those. So the subject property is located north of Sherwood Road within a business park industrial zone, and a portion of the land that's also zoned is also zoned heavy industrial. Uses within the area consist of car dealerships, office uses, equipment dealers, outdoor storage, and the Humane Society is also located there. So this portion is business park industrial, this portion is heavy industrial, and this piece here is landlocked. Both properties are vacant. The applicant's applied to consolidate the properties because he's purchasing the land from the property owner, Irving Frizzle, who the dwellings aren't shown, but they're generally over in this area. His main dwelling has to be subdivided from the parcel because it's not included with the sale of the land. And the property that's being purchased has split zoning, as I discussed. Because this doesn't have frontage on the road, by consolidating it, it actually makes this legal. I'm not really sure how this ended up not having frontage, but I'm assuming it's a residual parcel from other subdivisions that happened in the past. So in order to bring that property into compliance and just to sever that off from the main dwelling, the applicant has applied for this lot consolidation. So it's staff's opinion that the lot consolidation, it's not contrary to the bylaw, and staff is encouraging the board to recommend to council for approval.
Thank you very much, Laura. Any questions? Go ahead, Leslie.
Laurel, what are the development plans for that property?
What was that?
Do we know what the development plans are for that property?
Right now, they own a car dealership, just, I believe, right on this property right here, it's two. And they're gonna use this for parking right now for the dealership, but long run, they're looking at office building dealership kind of uses.
Thank you.
Any other questions, concerns? If not, I guess I'm looking for a motion. The request is to consolidate the two parcels of land.
I can move to accept staff's recommendation.
Okay, moved by Chris Forney, seconded by Shalyn. All those in favor? Very good. Thank you very much, everyone. You got that on? Good. Okay, thank you. Number 8, Watermark development regulations. Alex.
Thanks, Laura.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the water lot amendments, but we've been working on this for a while. It's been around 2 or 3 times. We had a public meeting on September 28th, and we had some input at that time. We got some good commentary. Some people seem to be generally supportive of it with some tweaking. There were some residents showed up from West Street that had some concerns in regard to the implications that it would have for them. Keeping in mind, the main reason for this was to deal with the floating docks. Because we're dealing with water lots, we had to deal with all the water lots, and then they somewhat come into the fray. On your desk tonight, there are a number of letters that came in from residents. I just want to make sure that you get the sense of what their concerns were, and I will try to respond to it. and the writing is so small. So this is just one letter. It's an example of what their concerns were, and I'm just trying to highlight that, trying to get at the crux of what their concern is. So this came in. It says, thank you for the detailed work on the proposal to bring in what appears to be a largely unregulated situation at our city's commercial waterfront properties. The main focus of the amendments centers on the commercial waterfront with the two new designations of water lot commercial and water lot open space, which closely corresponds to each other. As owners of residential waterfront properties, we would like the time to consider further the implications of rezoning the water lots on our residential properties. Unlike the commercial stakeholders, we were not directly notified of the proposed change. We, along with the general public, only found out at the public meeting on September 28th by reading the public notice in the Guardian. As a result, we would like to request the residential lots be excluded from the current proposal since they do not fall into the overall scope of the commercial waterfront. So I read that, and then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people signed that from West Street. And then you'll notice again in your package there's about 7 other submissions by people, some on West Street, some not on West Street, but again, they're all very similar in that they're basically saying, I would like all the water areas from Beacons Field to the National Defense Armory Point to be protected and exempted from the water lot amendment. So at any rate, there's about 6 or 7 more letters very similar to that. So I just wanted to highlight that. But the issue is that on the people on West Street, and I'm not certain whether it's getting through, but these amendments will protect the people on West Street as opposed to open the door. I don't know whether they're confusing some of the commercial activities that would happen down on the waterfront, but it would, and I'm going to just back up a step here. So these water lot amendments, they appear to be helping our friends that own the marina. They will eventually, but these water lot amendments are dealing with the status quo, and it's to set up the opportunity for the marina to come in. They'll come in when these amendments go through. So my job was to create a process where we could protect the status quo, both on the waterfront and with the lots over there. And then if people want to make changes, then they have to come through council through a site-specific amendment and get their approvals. So it's pretty quiet over there on West Street and nothing's happened for a long time, but that doesn't preclude the fact that something couldn't happen over there because there are development rights attached to these lots, which that's why what was going on with the commercial lots downtown. So the only thing that can happen over on West Street is the way the zoning bylaw is set up now. It's those water lots are residential in nature. The water lots down on the waterfront are whatever the adjacent zoning is, which is commercial. So they are different, but they are interconnected. So in light of coming here, and I knew there was some concern by the residents of West Street, I asked Mr. Hooley, can we sever them from these discussions? And Mr. Hooley's like, well, you got to be really careful because we have, once we start getting in with those other lots, you have to deal with them all the same. And then there's a whole part of law dealing with discrimination because the other people are saying, well, look, we don't want those regulations either, right? So we either regulate them all or we don't regulate them. So I'm just trying to clarify. I'm trying to get to the core of why the people on West Street, what their primary concerns are, because it will ensure that if anything happens over there, you'll get a letter in the mail in the future that your neighbor wants to do something that could protrude out into the water. And I think that that's what they would like, but I'm just trying to address the number of letters that did come in on this. They're on your desk. They're not very specific as to what their concern is, but it appears that they think that it may be opening up the door for commercialization. It's not the case. It's really restrictions, and now I will go into all of the amendments that I've made since the last public meeting. But I think I need to clarify. You'll see the owners of the marina. They'll be coming in when these amendments are done, and they're going to ask you specifically then on their lots that they're dealing with on the waterfront with the floating dock. And you will, the same as Laurel did a site-specific amendment just a minute ago, they'll have to do the same thing. So they'll have to indicate, this is the size of the dock, this is everything that we're dealing with, this is the location, and then the criteria is inside the zoning bylaw, what we're expecting for them to submit when they make their application. But the people over on West Street, it's, the zoning allows you to have a private marina or dock, like the same as anybody else, and that's it. That's it. You can't utilize those water lots for anything else unless you make an application to council. And their neighbors would be notified.
So can I just interrupt this? So if one of the private lots on West Street wanted to build a 6-foot dock out in front of their place, can they do that?
They can do that. They can do that now,
Right.
as long as they get whatever
that's a
approvals
shame.
they need,
Right.
and they can do it in the future. But so we're recognizing what they can do now,
Right.
but we're not granting any additional rights
Right, okay.
to fill in the water lot.
Right.
It's the filling in of them, because we don't control the fill. If they were to be filled in, it'll be the federal and provincial government that'll grant the approvals, and then they will be issuing permits then down there, and nothing's gonna come to
But this means so that whoever, if it was to be filled in, they would have to come and get a site-specific.
Well, exactly, if the amendments go through.
So there'd be another layer of protection there.
Right, exactly. You would have to come forward, and because the intent is just to have, the only use that's allowed on there is just the utilizing for just access to the water.
And so just before you go into the amendment, so basically all we're doing then, if I can get my head wrapped around this, we're basically taking the mess down there at the marinas and we're gonna put some control to it,
Right, exactly.
okay? And we're not putting any new in, we're just grabbing what's existing and taking the law and creating a bylaw.
Right.
So moving forward, no more mess can create unless
Right.
it's a site-specific.
Right, and I think the key thing is for most people, as long as they feel that I'm going to be notified, and that goes for the people
Right.
on the waterfront. They want to know, there's some players that are involved now, we don't know who the future players are going to be. So we're just creating a pathway forward. They're presently on a temporary use application.
Right.
It's coming to an end and they need a new pathway. We're developing the pathway, but the regulations tonight are supposed to reflect what's happening down there now for both adjacent to the commercial properties as well as over on the residential properties. But again, I mean, there's a lot of letters in there from West Street, but they're just not really clear to me what their primary concern is. But I just thought I'd point that out because there was a lot of letters.
Thank you very much. Alex, just because we had so many letters from the people on West Street, are there some options for things that we could do to clarify the issue, clarify their concerns, like something we can do proactively? To address what they're...
I've met with a number of people, I've talked to a number of people, maybe I'm not being clear enough, but it's just a matter of, there's a concern down there, but it's just hard for me to, I can address what I know exactly what the concern is, but it's not that clear in those letters, at least in my mind.
Maybe Councilor.
Councilor Yanko.
I think what the residents are asking for is, and I believe they asked you and Councilor McLeod perhaps, they want something in writing that protects their residential so that it's very clear to them that this is helpful and not harmful, because their fears could be, I mean, trying to read through this stuff is not as clear for us regular people, and they're concerned about boardwalks going in front of their place. Like, there's just a lot of concerns that are not clear. They're not even clear to me, and I'm the councillor in the area, so I guess you're looking for some assurances as the residents that their investments and their properties are protected residentially. Now, I think I understand it a little bit more, Alex, after you have explained it a little bit more, but I think the residents need to make sure that they're heard as well. As Rosemary said, that it's very clear that this will not disrupt anything that's already in existence to their harmonious lifestyles. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, but if you look at the amendments, and again, there's a whole lot of other little pieces to this, but they're in under water lot open space. And if you know how open space works on land, open space is the most restrictive zone on land, right? That tends to be parks or marshes or wetlands. It basically means not for development. That's what we're doing here. Those lots are intended not to be for development unless you have a really good compelling reason. It's funny in my office when people tell me, sure, let me do something, it's going to be great, Alex, and I go, well, you have to go through council, and they go, well, we don't want to go through the public process. And then I said, well, you just told me it was great. If it was great for me, it should be great for the neighbors as well, right? So this is setting up that opportunity that if you want to do something, there could be something that a homeowner wants to do in the future that's not going to offend the neighbors. Maybe they would come together on it, but at least there'll be a public discussion. So under the water lot open space, when you see permitted uses, the only uses allowed in the water are uses related to docking for private boats and watercraft, subject to federal and provincial approval. And that's it. That's it. So, you know, it, at least in my mind, and again, I'm trying to seriously discern what the concern is, but I think this will be in their interest, because all of the letters basically say to protect the, you know, all of the views all the way from the Armory all the way up to you know, the Beaconsfield, and this will do that. So,
Right.
but
So the call a spade is spade. So this is a bylaw that we're creating. I think the residents are concerned that it would put more meat on the bone for us to put a boardwalk across there. They want to have some assurance that the city isn't looking to put a boardwalk across there. This is all about the commercial development of the 3 marinas.
Right.
But it also gives the open space water lots protection that they
Right.
don't have now. Is that clear?
it is clear, and I thought as well. Nobody wrote that to me, but I did informally get that.
I think that's, yeah, informally, that's the justification.
Right.
Could that be emailed to those residents in those nice,
Simple words.
simple words like you just said?
It can be, or one of you. Let me think about that. Who's the best person to get back to them? But it's under that water space, open space zone, or water lot open space. It's a restrictive zone. It's not granting rights. It's restricting it, because there are some existing rights down there. They may or may not know that. So that's the same as the rights that were down there. That's how the original people got on the commercial water lots. So we're just trying to clarify these issues.
Right.
On the issue of the boardwalk, I don't have anything to do with the boardwalk. So I got to be careful on the boardwalk. It's another department, and I don't want to speak for another department. But having said that, there's only 3 ways you can get a right to something. You either have an existing right, you purchase the right, because you need easements, right, over these properties, or you expropriate the rights. So you can't get something you're not entitled to. So these amendments have nothing to do with that. I don't want to say anything about, I don't know the history down there. I told some of the residents, and I know that they would certainly be aware of things, but this isn't going to improve the city's position, or it's neutral in regard to that issue.
Okay, carry on. Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. I just have a question because I know there was other concerns and I didn't read through this.
I didn't get to the other concerns. I'm just
Yeah,
dealing with
I'm
what.
just dealing with that.
Yeah. Sorry, I mean, I just.
Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
So, again, the public meeting, there was, surprisingly, there was some good feedback and dialogue. I listened to a number of the concerns that came in. So that one was one, and again, the West Street crowd were the ones that certainly participated. There were some people there that evening from West Street at the public meeting. I got lots of calls, I met with some people, and we received the letters. And again, the city, I did seek some direction from the city solicitor, and he just said, you gotta be careful if you exempt people, because then you get into that issue, you gotta be really careful not to zone by people. It's gotta be by area or some planning rule or rationale. So then, the other one was that it came up from the Port Authority or something. They said, well, I hope this doesn't preclude us from putting in some stuff to deal with storm surge and climate change and things like that. So I did make an amendment there, which I'll read in a minute. Well, I can read it right now. It says, in the official plan, it says, this policy is not intended to restrict federally or provincially approved infrastructure that is required along the waterfront to respond to the impact of climate change, such as the installation of seawalls and breakwaters. So that was at their request, so I put that in. So then the marina owners had just as, when I met with them over the last little while, they had a number of little concerns, but requesting minor changes related to regulations. There's this concept of live-aboard vessels. And again, we did get into sort of an issue there with the live-aboard vessels, and we said if somebody's on that boat for more than 5 days, these regulations kick in. Well, that wasn't what we were. I don't want to get down there and be the police who's on those boats down there. It has to do with a live-aboard vessel is a vessel that is registered by the by the federal government, or it's been approved, but it can also be a houseboat. So there's two things down here. There's a float home. A float home has no motor, it's not motorized. It's just a home, but they do get federal approval. And the live aboard vessel is something that has a residential function on the water. It's motorized. But so I changed it to not to deal with the 5 days. All we're concerned about is if you're using them to rent, if you're renting them down there. So when you come through for an amendment in the future, you're going to then have to clarify, do you want a float home? Those cottages down there are float homes. But let's say it's a different person comes in, they may say, I don't want the float homes, I want a yacht. I want a yacht, I just want to pull it up beside the dock and I want to rent it. That's a live aboard vessel. So there's two terminologies in there that we have to be mindful of, and that's the clarity. Float home, no motor, live aboard vessels, federally approved and motorized. But they can be exactly the same, it's hard to even tell, but you have to clarify that in these regulations. So they were concerned about the length of time. I fixed that by just saying we're only concerned about those that are going to be rented to the public for residential purposes. The size of the floating structure. So the floating structure they're on, there was a bit of debate. We had 645 feet that we used the GIS, or we have the new orthophotography. They may ask you in the future for marginally larger, but I just said, so that, there was a bit of discussion on that, it may be larger, and I said, well, that's fine, but that's all I can quantify right now. That's what's there now, or I think is there now. If you have 700 feet, when you come through in the future, you can ask council to say, well, it's 700 or 745 square feet, and you can show it on a site plan. That's up to you folks when you want to prove it. But we're indicating as a marker, 645 feet should be the standard, because that's what's down there now on their operation. Okay, so we made some changes to the official plan as to what we're trying to do there, and it's still, the intent is for those water lots, they're for navigation primarily, and that's a tricky thing in regard to getting too far out away from the land, because then you start interfering with the neighbors that are trying to get out of the harbor. You don't want marinas, or you don't want a floating dock in the middle of the Port Authority when the cruise ship comes through. When I did talk to the Port Authority, when they're leaving town and they got a wind on them or whatever, and they have those side thrusters, they push down on those side thrusters to get away from that dock, and if you're too close to them, there's going to be an issue. So I took that all into account, that just, again, we're recognizing what's down there now. So they'll come forward, they'll make a site-specific amendment. So we did make some changes to Appendix B. There was a little bit of a disconnect in some of the regulations. It said there was no parking required because you can't park in the water. But the intent was when you come through for your site-specific amendment, we know that the marina operator down there, they do have some CADC delegated spots. So whoever comes in the future, they're going to indicate, well, I'm renting 4 spots somewhere else, and 4 of the people are going to use this facility, and we'll build that into the agreement. So we clarified that. So that there's not sort of a ambiguity in regard to the parking. And that would be prescribed by council as a part of the application. I talked a little bit about the size of the existing dock that's down there. I talked a little bit the live aboard vessels, and we removed the 5-day limitation on it, and I think it helps clarify it. The open space zone was improved to recognize the open space commercial was, I did put another little provision in there to recognize the port as a permitted use. Because the last thing we want to do is interfere with the port, and the port is so powerful in regard to it's a federal entity. I clarified that. And there was an issue we had on those little buildings that are on the floating dock. There were some separation distances. And the building inspectors will not be doing any inspections on them, but the fire department will. So we had a 3-meter separation distance, but I changed that and I said as prescribed by the fire department, because the bigger the setbacks you get, the bigger the dock is, and we're working against ourselves by getting these setbacks, but we'll get the most minimum setback we can get. So the real meat of it is in all of the attachments. So it's attachment A, attachment, and on page 173, What I was doing was I was trying to, where you found the term liveaboard vessel, I had a slash in it and had float home. Under section 35.4.4, I missed the float home, so I will change that before I send it to council. But they are to be used interchangeably because they could be one or the other. And again, I'll just pay reference and kind of explain how this will work. So under the definition of the waterfront commercial, the only two uses that are allowed in there are a commercial marina and a private marina. So, I mean, we're indifferent. And then it goes, the criteria below, everything below that is seeking, it's for those seeking to make an application for a site-specific exemption under section 3.1 of the zoning bylaw to obtain approval for either a floating dock, liveaboard vessel, or a float home will be required to adhere to the following standards as noted in the following sections. And then I also said council may consider varying some of this criteria below if they think it is in the public interest and does not compromise public safety. Because these are really specialized uses. This isn't as easy as regulating houses on land. So I can't even begin to configure a regulation of how to get separation distances down there. We'll get the application, we'll get all the other departments to look at it, we'll bring it forward with a recommendation. So that's that. I'll make a couple of amendments just where it says liveaboard vessel on 35.4.4, I'll put float homes. And then under 35.4.3, at the very end, it says liveaboard vessels and float homes shall operate between May 1st and October 31st, and at which time the vessel must be removed from the water. So it says that in that section, but then in the next section, it says, when you come forward on the site-specific exemption, what I'm trying to do is telegraph, we don't want a whole lot of stuff down there all winter every year. So that's kind of the intent. But in the next section, it says, you can, when you make your site-specific exemption, you can indicate, do you intend to take it out of the water? If not, why not? And then you folks can make a determination. But the intent is, we don't want a whole lot more stuff down there than we have to sitting there all winter. So I know that there's a lot of twists and turns in this, but I think it's in relatively good shape. Attachment D is the definitions. Float home means a structure incorporating a flotation system or a converted vessel that is used as a self-contained dwelling unit but is not intended for navigational purposes. Liveaboard vessel means any vessel or watercraft that is occupied for rent to the public for residential purposes that can either be anchored or moored to a dock. This definition does not apply to liveaboard vessels that are either used by the boat owner in the commercial marina to reside there. Attachment E is dealing with the zoning, and attachment F is dealing with the future land use map. It includes them all. And attachment G is all of the official plan policies and what we're trying to achieve there. But again, it's just the framework for the operator that's on the marina down there to come forward. They'll likely come forward if you approve these December or January. And they're going to be a little bit up against it as well because they're going to be ready to get it operated next April, presumably, and 3 months for them to go through their approval process. So I know
so
that.
They plan to, that's what you mean out, Mr. Forbes, is that they plan to then probably come back with their own application.
Correct.
To do more than what's already in existence.
Right.
Right.
So these are they're on CADC, Charlottetown Area Development Corporation lots. So they're going to have to show you exactly which lots they're going to be on, and you can't just get an approval and just move over to the other side. So they're going to have to put their cards on the table of what they want in the future, and we'll analyze all of those details, the separation distances, but we'll base it upon the criteria we have, given some general framework there as to what we're going to be looking for. But for the most part, that will take care of them. I think that will likely quiet things down for most people. But we also have to be mindful that this also gives the opportunity for others to make an application. There's not that many other people that are not the Port Authority or the Charlottetown Area Development Corporation. There are some private properties down there that are also adjacent to the waterfront that are deemed water lots as well.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I have a question.
Yes, you may ask.
So when you say others could put applications in, you mean the people on West Street could put applications?
People on West Street, people on those new developed homes on Water Street.
Yeah.
So they could make some applications as well. I doubt that they will, but
what could those be?
Well, it's hard to say, but you know, what they can't do if you put these things through is they cannot push out, if they got a federal approval to fill in their lot, and then to put a garage or something out 20 feet, 40 feet, 60 feet out into the water.
Could they apply to put a floating cottage out there? And rent
Well,
it out?
then they need to go through you folks.
But the option's there.
Well, the options is for
there
anybody.
now.
It's the same as any rezoning. You
So
would
the
have,
option's there now, you should.
well, there's a lot of ambiguity down there as if people started to exercise some of those rights, the same as it is for the marina.
They could apply right now if they wanted to put something out there. Is that what I understood too?
If, you know, particularly the ones on Water Street, because I think they're zoned commercial down there, so they're a little bit different in regard to, different from West Street again. But we're only recognizing a certain number of them down there is even opening the door for commercial, and then the other ones the door is for residential. You know, they're restricted to the residential uses.
Okay, I would have a question. So, the floating homes, the cottages, how many is there in existence right now?
And Mr. Chair, so when I look through the reports, every time the Gales, the former users, come through, it was always referred to that they had 3 floating cottages.
Right.
And at the last minute,
This is what
I was
I was
informed that they do have 4. I did put that in the report, even though the criteria in the report says ideally there should only be 3 floating cottages on every lot. I did put in the report that we do recognize, staff recognize that they do have 4, and we would support 4 because that's what they have there now as a part of a future site-specific amendment.
Okay, thank you very much. I was wondering, because I remember hearing that, 3, but there is 4. Okay, thank you. Yes, Councilor McKay.
Thank you. And I think I thought I was understanding, and I think I'm now confused again. So with the residents on West Street, and I know what you're saying, that you can't really separate it because it's water, I get that, like water's water, but can there be something in there where it's clear what is only allowed, so that people know what's allowed versus what's not allowed? I know we believe that we know the intention is people of West Street don't want anything, but moving forward, once you pass bylaws, then it just...
Well, it's the open lots that protect them, right? The open space.
Right. It's if you you know, and again, I mean, if council, you know, if you want to digest this, you know, just look at the 2 zones, section 35 and 36, and it's just the opening. It's just two permitted uses. So on water lot commercial, existing uses such as navigation and docking for commercial, petroleum, aggregate, cruise ships, vessels and navigation, docking, and marine related to the Port Authority. Pretty straightforward. The commercial marina and the private marina. So those things are existing there now. Nothing's changing. So the marina's down there and the port's down there. But if you want to do anything different, if you want to get a floating dock, if you want a floating home, if you want a live-aboard vessel, you need to come through to here. And then on these lots, which are on Water Street, these are all open space, and the only thing allowed there is a dock. That's approved by the federal government. I don't know who approves those things, but they're already docked down there on some of those places on Water Street. And that's fine, because that's, even if there was no water lots, you can do that anyways, right? As long as you can get the other approvals. We don't get into docks. So we're just reflecting what's existing now, but restricting from, these are the only lots, these are the commercial ones, the light blue ones. So where there's light blue, there's already commercial activity on it. We're not giving anybody any more commercial, and everybody else is restricted to the open space unless they go through a process. Open space, you know, yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Alex. Just to reiterate, the residential zoned water lots,
Yep.
the way it exists right now, and the way it could exist if we put these new principles in place, are guaranteed that there's only 3 ways that they can take their waterfront from them and build for the city to build something, and that was the 3 ways that you stated, whether we do this or we don't, which is you buy the land from them,
Right.
or you expropriate, there was a third one.
If you have an existing right over it now.
Right,
Yeah.
which they, so there's no way that there's going to be any change for the residents of West Street for the harmonious lifestyle that they have, that they've bought to have that.
Under the planning department
Well, exactly. That's
Then
all.
we gotta get into the
Right,
public
I-
works and public parks.
Yeah, you can ask that to recreation, and I really don't know the answer, but
Right.
I can't, it's the same when people ask me about Scott Adams' operation. I may think something, but he needs to say he's comfortable with something. But here, I can say with certainty, these regulations doesn't improve anybody's, they're kind of two separate issues. So whatever rights or lack of rights we have, this isn't going to improve our ability to take anything from anybody, and it's restricting some property owners from doing things that I think most residents down there would have concern with. So they're kind of two separate issues. This one is not improving our ability to to get a trail through there.
It's that silos work.
But if I may go.
That's what I'm concerned about, is the whole silo thing. I think we need to have the answer to that question, whether it's from another department or not.
I don't sit on Parks and Rec, but I'd certainly love to have that. So that-
Well, that'd be a question for when the council gets together, right? It's not a question to be answered by planning, because you need all of council to be there. But at the end of the day, I think, for me, what I get out of this is, right now, if one of those West Street residents decided to sell their home, and the person that buys it decides to do a development there's nothing stopping them from doing it once they get the federal legislation, right? Where this, at least, will make them have to go to a site-specific exception. They'll have to come through here first before they can even go. That's one good thing I'm getting out of this.
Well, no, I don't think so,
Right.
Mr. Council, but they're zoned residential, the other ones down here are zoned commercial.
But because it's
So it's very different.
all water lots are involved, right?
So, but again, just keep, the way that it works now, these water lots, they take the zoning that's adjacent to them. It's just the way the zoning bylaw refers to them. So down here, there's a lot of commercial uses down here so they take the same zoning as the waterfront zone, there's a lot of things can happen in the waterfront zone. So all we did as a part of these amendments, we didn't give anybody, we're even restricting some rights down here. We're only putting this water lot commercial on places that has commercial on it now. Nobody else gets it, including even these lots over here on Water Street. Those are commercial lots, but they're also coming in under water space open, meaning that's restricted. So they won't be adding any floating cottages or whatever unless they get your approval. So I think these mechanisms are for unless I'm certainly missing something, and I try every time I come here not to misrepresent any situation. That's why I read those letters from the people from West Street. If I thought there was something that I was missing, I would try to find that out to make sure that we were not leading you or them in a direction that was contrary to their best interest. Now, if you wanted to develop your lot down there, you would have a reason to be opposed to these regulations. If you wanted to push out and fill in the lot, go out 200 or 300 feet, build a big stable or barn on the end of it, or an accessory building, you might be entitled to do that.
And as long as they stay private owned, then
they are part of the deed on the lot. I mean,
Right.
it's just like you own this, your meets and bounds and your property just shoots right through out into the land, 200, 300, 400 feet.
So it's safe to say, that what we're doing today is we're more or less concentrating on the marina side. We're trying to put something order in there to keep them from going as crazy as it has been. And then anything coming forward has to be put through a site-specific exception and applied to us.
Right.
And then, and as far as what's happening down on West Street, nothing's changing for them folks. It's as is. The open space still protects them as it is today.
I would say that I
Right.
personally think it's protecting them more.
But-
Because there's
because-
some ambiguity in regard to
Right.
what could happen down there. The
Right.
same as any of those along the waterfront. So we're clarifying.
And just to clarify, so what happens now, those residents are all together and they're all on one page and they don't want to develop. But if someone did, something can happen to a family and they put it up for sale, that lot could be developed. if they went through those.
Right. My fear would be that somebody at a higher level of government gives approvals down there, and by the time I get a hold of it, it will be a building permit in the
Right.
planning department that I will be obligated to approve.
Okay, but under this system where
That's
these
right.
principles,
We get
they
more
would
control.
have to come here regardless.
Right, exactly. That's the
Very
intent.
good.
The concerns from the residents, I think, Councillor Yankoff, are not according to planning what their regulations are. That's where it would be more with Parks and Rec on the boardwalk, on what,
That's right.
so that's a separate, unfortunately.
Yeah, you're right.
Unfortunately, but
It's
that's
a
the-
separate thing.
But that's the question that the residents asked and asked and asked and asked. And at no point were they told, it's not our department, because they could have then been seeking this question before now. They don't have that answer yet, because no one ever told them that that's not a planning thing. You've got to go to Parks and Rec to get that determination. So I'm just concerned for their security, that somebody, if somebody could just answer that.
Well, I guess the
Main
thing is,
question.
I think we heard from the planning manager that this is only gonna help them. But for
Yeah.
your concern, I think you need to go in to see Mr. Kelly and book an appointment with council and have that discussion.
And Mr. Quinn, because if there is history on it,
Right.
I'm not that familiar with it.
I think
So
that's where you need to go with that.
It would be different if this was enabling us to take something.
Right,
They would
but it's
have every
not.
right, and you have every right to go, well, look, I'm not going to make a decision on it until I know that. But it's an unrelated to the zoning on the property. But it's a valid question.
Okay,
Maybe we'll write something up and get you to look at it to make sure that what we're writing up makes sense, because I have a couple residents
Yeah,
that
sure,
aren't
look.
even waterfront people that
Yeah,
have
look.
questions, so.
And
And then we can send out a comment message to Councillor Yankoff.
so upon approval here this evening, where does it go from here? Alex?
It'll go to council.
It will go to council?
It'll go to council, and then if you approve it, it's still going to take, so it'll get approved in this month. It will get its second reading in December. It'll take the good part of December to get approved by the province. I'm not trying to rush this thing, but we know how long it's been around. I was kind of run up against it last year, and then the clock is coming back to April when the whole marina opens again. So, we might have an extra month if we had to, but and then I was asked to delay it over the summer months because CADC and the Port Authority were trying to kind of get their head around it. But I don't like to speak for them, but I think that they feel that they've been heard, and that I think they're okay with things. But I always hate saying that. It's up to them to say that.
Councilor Kelly.
I just want to clarify that, so after the meeting, because there were lots of invested people that were interested, you already met with them, you guys feel like you kind of
Right.
got on a reasonable page based on your.
Yeah, I met with one person on my office from West Street. I talked to a person on West Street. I met with a business owner, not related to the marina, but beside the marina. I've talked all the way along to the stakeholders down there because they bought the thing. And
Yeah, no, that's right, I just wanted to make sure they were. at that
So,
opportunity.
okay, and so just to clarify, this is not going to hamper the West Street residents in any way, shape, or form than what is there today, except it's going to strengthen it.
With the only caveat, it will hamper them if they wanted to develop way out into that water. It's going to hamper them.
Yeah, but if they don't, that's right,
Right.
only if they want to develop.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Earlier in your presentation, I think you used the word baseline, so that's kind of what's there now. And
Right,
to go
exactly.
above that, there's ample approvals required.
Right, so I sometimes, you think in your mind, how can I say this in the least amount of words with the most amount of clarity? So here are all the water lots. The only ones that we're dealing with right now are the area right in here, and then there's a little piece over here, which is the Caskin Keg, or what the name keeps changing. But the only place, so all of the dark blue is restricted, super restricted. It's like open space on land. Pretty well not for development unless you go out to the public and you convince the public and council to. So all of these lots here, that's the port. All of these things have various pieces of infrastructure at Charlottetown Yacht Club. You use the aerial photography. You see how far the docks go out. Some of the various people said, can you push those out to the furthest extremities? And I was reluctant to do that because, again, that's where the big cruise ship, pulls up. And when he puts on that side thruster, and you know what a side thruster is on a 15-story, you don't want to have your infrastructure next door on a floating dock.
Slide those. It doesn't sound
Good.
like.
Any other, Rosemary?
I just wanted to share an observation. So Alex, listening to you, it seems like it's fairly clear, the distinction between the commercial water lots and open space water lots. However, there's confusion, obviously, among some of the residents, especially those in West Street. So I think we have like a communication issue, and I think it's something that we should try to resolve.
But it should be fairly, like, if people would read these documents, you know, again,
They're not that easy to read.
yeah, okay, well, sorry, maybe it's me reading them.
Sometimes it
Laurel's
is.
good at reading them, sorry,
It is, for sure, because
Right.
there's things in all of our jobs we do sometimes, and it's stuff that we do, and it's language we use that very common to us, but maybe
And I
not so
just think
much.
like part of what needs to be communicated is what currently exists. Because people might be assuming that what exists is not, you know, they make false assumptions about protection, being protected. You're saying that they're not really protected now. But I think like there needs to be clarification around how things currently are, and then what these new regulations are going to bring in, and what the differentiation is between water lots and commercial and the map. I mean, the map's a good tool too.
Yeah, not that's all.
It's just an observation, I mean.
And again, look,
We're gonna do something
We always
and we're
wanna
gonna
hear
have
about it.
people who are quite
Yeah.
upset.
but again, it's your job, sometimes people will state, it's like some of the letters that came in on from Mr. Banks' project. It's really hard to go at the issue if people don't clarify what the issue is. Somebody said they were opposed to that project. We have an idea why they were opposed. They were opposed for different reasons. So that's why I spent a little bit of time on this. It's not clear why they're opposed. Sometimes it's just that people get confused when they hear that you're commercial, you know, like that there's a floating dock in front of my place. But again, I've spent some time with some people that are fairly knowledgeable, and I think some people would just like to fly below the radar and not get involved with the other thing as well. But
I think they're opposed to something that has nothing to do with what your job as the planner is. I think
Good,
they're opposed
'cause-
to Parks and Rec and what's could potentially happen in that
I can tell
department.
you that the residents of West Street are concerned
Yes.
that the city of Charlottetown is gonna bulldoze their way through and put a boardwalk in front of their properties. I know that that's their concern,
So-
because they told me.
Okay, so
and-
clarity, Alex, does this help that
no,
process?
it does not. It does not enhance. It doesn't do. It's neutral.
discourage you.
That's right. I mean,
If anything, it just.
Right.
It does nothing, because it's
But
not
in
your
the
property.
process, if you want to, as council there, to bring that forward to council as to, okay, let's hit the ball on the head here, the nail on the head here, and deal with that issue, then let's do it. But
And-
this has nothing to do
And
with
just
it.
as an aside, to build on what Rosemary said, and this is not really a planning principle or a planning issue, this is a city hall issue. We can't work in silos.
No.
Because, just because planning can't do it, and then you find out Parks and Rec can't.
Correct. That's what we
That
can
doesn't
change. to the
jive
next
for the
level.
residents of Charlottetown. Like, I mean, they need to know the overall picture, like, you know, we
But-
need to jump out of these silos.
and not to, I'm trying to be sensitive here, but you got to be careful. You can't, like, if that was your reason for turning this down, it wouldn't be a good reason to turn it down because it's not related to this, right? That's the issue. But
No.
it's a city issue, but it's not related to this.
Yes,
Yeah,
no,
but it's
understand.
perceived as being related to this.
Right.
That's where we need to do
Proceed.
better as
So
council.
there's another process that's got to happen
Right.
to solve that residential problem.
And I don't want to comment on it because I don't know what the past on it is, and I don't know what the future is. So,
Yeah,
but
well,
I just know that
residents
this
can-
doesn't help them anymore.
And I think to help Councilor Hancock, the residents can produce the history, and I think that's a discussion we had with all the departments, and that it means council. So I think, I guess we're ready if we're, any other questions, concerns? Anyone want to make a motion? So you're saying roughly January, you're looking to have this?
Well, I would say that if it flows through, and if council approves it on Monday night, it will get finally approved in sometime in December. I would recommend that the marina operator come in and start the process, because they're going to need a public hearing as well. So if they come in December, it's still going to be early in December. They'll start the process, and then you'll be setting a public hearing, maybe for January or something. I mean, just public meetings at the end of December are great, but we can work with them on that. They can do it concurrently. It takes a little 3 weeks to get approved by the province, but they can start the process. I just don't want to be back into this while they're trying to get leases secured down there, and their temporary use is
Tourist
expired.
season.
So you're assuming that they are going to want to expand and they're going to be bringing in an application? Is that why they need to bring in an application?
Well, no, they need to get approved exactly what they have down there. This isn't going to do it for them.
Gotcha, 'cause this is just a change.
This just opens the door,
I know.
and then they need to, like this issue of 645 square feet, the existing floating dock. Well, when I do my measurements from the orthophoto, that's what I get, but they may say, well, look, we think it would work better, we can come off. They can have a ton of reasons like any application, but we'll work that out with the other staff. We'll bring forward the recommendation, but the only thing I would indicate, the criteria says 3 float homes. I'm indicating that staff recognize they got 4, we'll support 4. I can't say that you folks will support 4, but that's on the table because that's what they already have.
Right. And so the new owners, basically, like the way it was before, everything was temporary use, right?
Right.
So and it's kind of a cluster, you know what? So
if
we're involved to put clarity to it.
So if we pass, if we recommend this to council and council accepts it, do our first reading, the people that are needing to put in an application, specifically at the marina, they might put in an application and ask for 6 more floating homes.
They could, but that's why that criteria is there, right? It's the
Okay.
benchmark. Now, you folks can say, sure, we'll allow you to have 6, but the criteria says 3, right? But that's why I'm just kind of, there's a little nuance. I thought, should I allow it to go to 4? But if everybody then did 4 on every lot, it's a lot more. So that's the only, I did talk to them recently, and I told them I would clarify that this evening. Everybody knows there's 4 floating homes down there, or cottages, and that we would recognize that. I said I would support them because that's what they have now. Anything beyond that is up to other staff, myself, fire department, yourselves, as to whether you are willing to go any further. They may reconfigure that as well, right? They may want to make that, I don't know. But they have to put their cards on the table, and then we'll get a development agreement, and we will rezone. So this little thing will rezone the portions of the water lot they have, and then and highlight there's a development agreement on there for that, what's in the water and their requirements. And then there'll be annual inspections. The fire department will likely get down there because this stuff gets ripped up every year, and sewage gets disconnected, and the power gets disconnected. They'll need annual inspections to get going in the future when they get their permit approval.
Okay, thank you very much, Alex.
Thank you, Alex.
Do we feel like making a motion?
I'm going to put a motion, I think I feel comfortable in this, to accept staff's recommendation to amend the waterfront.
I think it's a needed thing, and there's always concerns, and I think Councilor Hancock and myself will address those at council as far as the other matter with the residents, but in no way, shape, or form is this going to hurt the residents. It's only going to tighten up another nut and bolt that someone will have to go through.
Unless they want it to develop.
Unless they want to develop themselves. Yeah.
Out into the middle of the water.
So I need a second. Moved by Councilor McCabe. Do I have a second? Seconded by Shalon Murray. All those in favor, please raise your
Can we have a
hand.
discussion? Can I have a
Oh,
question?
yes, we're not done. You want to
Yeah.
discuss? Sure.
Just quickly, I will support this resolution to continue on to council. However, between now and our council meeting, I will seek to get the information answered so that the rest of council has these same questions answered that we don't have the answer to right now, which is about the protection of the shoreline that the city could build a boardwalk, because that is a question that the residents of West Street need that answer to. And I'd like to be able for us to stand up in council and be able to give that answer on the next
You could
council meeting.
perhaps approach Councilor Bernard and manager Parks and have that put on the agenda. Yeah.
You can help me.
Well, I can.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so we do have a motion. Councilor McCabe, seconded by Shalon Murray. Yeah. All those in favor? We're good to go. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Great discussion.
It was, that was,
Well, it's a complicated file, and I'm glad the planning board takes the time to address each of these issues, and especially the ones to the residents.
And Mr. Chair, if it's any
Yes.
consolation, Halifax had a similar situation. They brought in some bylaws. I don't know exactly what but they're similar to us, because people were concerned that people
Well,
like
it's kind of a
intruding,
nightmare, right?
intruding on, in and around Point Pleasant Park, again, it's another old city.
but after 3 years on council, I've come into I never missed a planning meeting yet. Like tonight I learned about the difference between what planning, because I would have assumed like your residents, that would have been impacting on
Yeah.
things, so,
Yeah.
and that's 3 years.
Yeah.
But the key
Consultation
thing
is
is, no
great.
matter, zoning can limit you what you can do with a property, but it can't take something away from you. And you can't build a road over somebody's
Okay, good
property
chairs,
or
yeah.
right away unless you have to legally get it. So I don't know where we are on that process.
Yeah, we can do better.
Okay. Okay, number 9, reconsideration for corner of Towers Road, Maverick Road, pin number 390559, 390534, and 390542. Townhouses number 1, number 2, and number 3, site and foundation permit approval. Al?
Okay, so this has got, this is another, Laurel dealt with this application earlier, and you made a recommendation to send this back to council to get it approved on Monday night. This is an appeal on the foundation permits that council approved on August 28th, I think, was August 26th. So Mr. MacArthur, you have the letter on your desk this evening. He's got a number of concerns with the mayor having a conflict of interest, the mayor's company. It's all in there. So that's a part of his reconsideration. And then on the second page of that, on your are the 2 issues that I'm going to spend my time on. So we're into the reconsideration process. We've been here before. Reconsideration by its nature is intended to, it's kind of like to give us a sober second thought. Like if something goes through the process, somebody identifies, I like to use analogies, a flag on the field, we made a mistake, it will allow us the opportunity to go, wow, we made a mistake. We don't have to wait 3 months to go to IRAC or 6 months. Let's just run this whole system back through. Unfortunately, with reconsideration, that's never happened. So we're here, it's double the amount of appeal processes, and I'm a land use planner, and I'm not a lawyer. So the first issue, dealing with the conflict, whether it's the mayor, whether it's any one of you, whether it's staff, that is a legal issue, and that is better dealt with by IRAC. So, Mr. MacArthur has the right to go to IRAC. Most people end up at IRAC anyways, but that's the place for that decision to be made, and it's not for me to try to get into any kind of law dealing with it. I don't know the answer to it. They'll deal with it over there. The other 2 issues are more in my wheelhouse, and those are the 1 and 2. On the page 2 of his thing, he says, absence of approval where a subdivision of land or lot of subdivision requires approval of the appropriate authority, no building or development shall be issued by the appropriate authorities prior to the approval of the subdivision. The land in question in this appeal is also currently subject to the IRAC rezoning appeal. Well, it's in your report that I wrote to you and through Mr. Hooley, and it's a long-standing issue. When you're at appeal, that doesn't mean that we can restrict you from continuing to build. We write you on the building permit, we say you're on your own risk. If IRAC overrules you and you get into trouble with them, they tell you to tear it all down, you were put on notice that IRAC was reviewing this. So it's called a stay. There's no ability to have a stay and wait till that whole process is over. So that's his primary concern in number 1. The land in question is under appeal, currently subject to IRAC. Okay. Hence, there was absence of approval for the necessary rezoning of the land. Well, the land was approved by the minister. When you folks do a rezoning, once it goes to the minister signs off, and that means it's ready to go. And that August 26th meeting, which was nuanced about the foundation permits, you gave me the ability through the development agreement to issue the permit. So I think we're okay on that one. Both the developer and the city have maintained the Sherwood Crossings case that they are able to have permits approved, in this case site and foundation permits for this project, because there was a development agreement in place, which is correct. The development agreement is in place is not sufficient condition to approve a development permit or a building permit or of any kind. Additionally, although PEI legislation may be silent, he goes that other provinces actually invoke a stay, which means you cannot get a building permit. But that's in the provincial legislation. We don't have that, so we can't do that. And my problem is that if I say to somebody, I'm not going to issue you a permit, and I have no reason to do that, they potentially could litigate the city or the department or me. But so, again, I work very closely with Mr. Hooley on these issues. So those two issues I've got in my report to you, that in my mind, there's no issue from the reconsideration process there. And so I'm indicating to not reconsider this application, but I do indicate that the whole issue, the first part, and whether it's the mayor or anybody, like I say, it is, you folks have asked those questions of the city solicitor. They're all individual context. And then the other thing too is when you go to IRAC, it's just a different forum than council or this forum here. You're all sworn in, evidence, testimony. There's no wiggle room when you get in. It's like a court of law there. So it's much more designed to deal with those more complicated issues. So I'm indicating based upon the two, and then on the third one he said there's some other issues, but he presumably wants to bring them up, and I reckon he has every right to do that. But for reconsideration, his two major points there that I've just alluded to, in my opinion as a planner, I don't think that we erred in any capacity there, and we will let IRAC deal with the other. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Alex. Great explanation. Councillor McKay.
Yeah, so, I think I was one of the few councillors that actually voted against the permit application, and so I do know that when we're looking at our threshold test, I don't think that the process was flawed in any way, and I won't be supporting the reconsideration.
Thank you very much. Anyone? Yes, Councillor?
And I concur with what Councillor McCabe says. I also won't be supporting the reconsideration. But more of a question, and maybe just a direction from you, Alex, of where we might get this answer, and I assume it's from the city solicitor. When Mr. McCarthy refers to the conflicts of interest, were those, I know that they're not part of the threshold, but were those addressed by Mr. Hooley?
There's a whole lot of, anytime conflict comes up, Mr. Hooley never gives an opinion in public. That's just, but he advises me. He advises you, and he may give you kind of a closed door opinion. So when a conflict of interest comes up, he starts kind of a file on it immediately. So somebody said Alex was in conflict of interest. You have to address the issue, and I can't address the issue, or let's say Laurel was in conflict of interest. You need sort of a neutral party to look at that. It's him or our legal firm. So they start to look at it, and it takes some time to get into all of the nuances of it, right? And Mr. MacArthur lays out a whole lot of points here this evening. So you've got a lot of pieces of legislation which are well beyond the Planning Act, which is my wheelhouse. There's the MGA, which is not my wheelhouse. It's David's wheelhouse or our lawyer's wheelhouse in regard to when you're in conflict. So he does have a file. There's some discussion back and forth with Mr. Kelly and others on this issue. So, but again, this isn't the forum to deal with that. But it's not as though that there hasn't been work done on this case. And again,
it's not being ignored.
It's not being ignored, and Mr. Hooley will be prepared if he's at IRAC, because when you make your grounds, you have to go in and defend those grounds, and so that discussion will be had. And what happens when you're in those tribunals, more information comes out, right? You ask the other side, well, if you're claiming that, do you have some additional evidence? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but very fluid over there. But again, I just stick in the planning wheelhouse, and I'm quite content to stay in that house.
And just one more follow-up.
Yes, go ahead.
Can I ask?
Yes.
So if the appeal that's in IRAC presently finds in favor of the person who filed the appeal, that means that everything that's been done so far at Sherwood Crossing has to be totally taken away and brought back to the way the property already was?
Well, it depends on what they did. Like the conflict of interest, again, I hate speculating on how they would rule. That has to do with the process. It had very little to do with the building. Let's say that somebody had proceeded on a building that was not in the development agreement, then somebody appealed the fact that they were allowed to go as far as they did. They were deviating from the development agreement. IRAC may rule then, well, you did have a development agreement, you didn't shut them down early enough, the development agreement was really clear that the building was supposed to be this, and we're going to dictate that it goes back. They usually send it back to fix the process. So the worst case scenario is to get vetted back through planning board and council. You may make the same decision, but you have to make it, they will say, maybe planning board erred in that they didn't do this, or council erred in that they didn't give enough reasons or rationale, or the mayor erred, or anybody erred because they should have stepped away from that. But usually the remedy, I think, is just to rerun the process, but I'll leave that to them.
So, okay, thank you very much. Any other questions, concerns? I see not. So, we'll need a motion to deal with the request. So, the recommendation from staff is not to reconsider. I think Councillor McKay moved it, Councillor Yankoff. Are you seconding that? No, okay. I'll need a seconder then to deny the request.
I can second it.
Yeah, okay, so moved by Councillor McKay, seconded by Councillor Yankoff, that the request to reconsider be denied. All those in favor? You're unanimous again. Thank you very much. Okay.
Can I ask one more question on
sure.
that application?
Yeah,
Just
sure.
because it's a very confusing one too, because we've been doing it in stages and whatever. But now that the concept design is gonna go to council, if council accepts that change, do we still have to approve every step of his?
Well, what it
process?
is he will, as long as he's got all of this paperwork in, if council approves it next Monday night, a week from now, he'll like to get a permit for the townhouse portion. That's that phase of it. The next phase, he'll have to come back.
What's the next thing?
Well, whether he wants to, there's a large apartment building in there, there's other buildings in there. So he'll have to come back, and if he wants to be proactive, he can come in and ask for changes to that, before he's actually looking for a building permit.
Okay,
Okay.
If he wanted to make changes, maybe he
Yeah,
doesn't, I
that's
have no
good.
idea.
yeah,
Good question, yeah.
thank you.
Okay, number 7, introduction of new business. I don't think we're going to find any. We've pretty well covered everything here tonight. I'll leave one more motion. That's to adjourn. Moved by Councilor McKay, seconded by everybody. By Bobby Kenny. All those in favor? Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, thank you.